Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of the lesson. My name is Miss Johnston and today we're going to learn about patterns. So a pattern is a repeated design or sequence, and it's an ordered set of numbers, shapes, or other mathematical objects arranged according to a rule. So before we get into the rest of the worksheet, I want you to go look around your house and see if you can see any patterns. So go explore, have fun, pause the video, and when you've found a couple patterns, come back and we will start going through the worksheets. So now that you've found a couple patterns, we are going to look at a couple different patterns that might be common on your worksheets. So let's start with our first one right here, which is shapes. So in our example here, we have a triangle, we have a square, and then we have a pentagon. And then triangle, square, pentagon, triangle, square, pentagon. So that is the pattern. We are continuously repeating those three shapes. Now the next one is shape and color. So we have a green triangle, a blue square, and a purple pentagon. And we repeat that every time. So maybe you have color and rotation. So for example, if we look at our purple slice right here, we are actually rotating this 90 degrees clockwise every time we go through the pattern. So here, once we move to the second one, we've rotated 90 degrees clockwise. For the third one, we've rotated another 90 degrees clockwise, and we continue that pattern. Now for the second one, number and rotation, here we have one yellow dot in our circle right up here. And on the second one, we actually have the same pattern. So we have a repeat of our first circle. So we have the first circle, we have the same circle for the second, and then for our third circle, we actually take that single yellow dot and we rotate it 180 degrees clockwise. Now I realize I've said clockwise. If you don't know what clockwise is, that's if you were looking at a clock, the way the hands move in order for you to tell time. So not backwards, but forwards on a clock. So that is what clockwise means. Now here, we're looking at a pattern for number by addition. So we go from 2 to 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So here we're adding 2 each time. Now the last one is number by multiplication. So we have 2, and then we're going to multiply by 2, which gives us 4. We multiply the 4 by 2, which gives us 8. We multiply 8 by 2, which gives us 16, and so on and so on. So we keep following those patterns. So as you can see, there's lots of different patterns, whether it's a shape and a color and a rotation, a number and a rotation, number by addition, or number by multiplication. Either way, today we are going to get to explore some more patterns. For this next part, you are going to need this sheet with the 100 chart on it. So you will also need a blue, red, and yellow crayon or pencil crayon. So you are going to complete this skip counting worksheet. The first instruction is to count by 2s, and you're going to color all those boxes blue. So we would go to 2 and we would color number 2 blue. We would skip to 4 because that's 2 squares, and we would color that one blue. Then we're going to skip another 2, so 5, 6, we would color 6 blue, and you would continue that all the way until you get to 100. Now the next one is to count by 3s. And for 3s, you're going to color those boxes red. So same thing we did for the 2s, but now we're counting by 3s and we're using red. So you're going to count 3, 1, 2, 3. You're going to color in the third box, and then you're going to count 4, 5, 6, and you're going to color that box with red. Now you are going to continue to do that. You may overlap on numbers, and that is perfectly fine. So the next one, you're going to count by 4s. For this one, you're not coloring, you're drawing triangles. So feel free to either do that with one of your crayons, or you can actually grab a pencil and do that. Then the fourth instruction is to count by 5s, and you're going to color those boxes yellow. And then the last one is to count by 10s, and you're going to circle all of those numbers. Once again, with either your crayons or pencil crayons that you're using, or you can use a pencil. So once you have done that worksheet, feel free to move on to the next one. Just pause the video here, and as soon as you hit play, we'll be on to the next worksheet. Now we are going to move on to the back side of that page, and it's titled Problem Solving, Find a Pattern. So what you want to do is you want to find the pattern so that you can complete the chart. So the first question is, how many wheels are on 6 wagons? So we need to think about how many wheels are on one wagon. So we can look at the picture and we see 2 here, but there's a second side to the wagon that we don't see, which can be a little tricky. So there's 4 wheels on a wagon. So number of wagons in our first column here, it's given to us. If we have 1 wagon, that means we have 4 wheels. So if we add a second wagon, we are going to have our original 4 wheels plus 4 new wheels on our wagon, which would bring us to 8. So now you're going to continue that. If you were to add a third wagon, how many wheels would we have? So you would have to take the 4 wheels that we have on our first wagon plus the 4 wheels that we added for a second wagon, which gave us 8. And then you're going to need to add 4 more wheels to give us how many we would have for 3 wagons. So I want you to try that. So pause the video so that you have time to go through it. And then you're just going to answer the question. There are blank wheels on 6 wagons. So once you fill in your chart, you are actually going to get a number right here for 6 that is going to tell you how many wheels you'll have on 6 wagons. Now, your parents are going to have an answer key so they can check what answer you get, but just go through the chart and then we'll move on to the second one. For number 2, we are looking at how many corners are on 7 triangles. So I want you to count all the corners on this triangle, and that is going to be the value for if you had 1 triangle. Now, the same type of thing we did with our wagon, where we took the number we got and we added the same number so that we could figure out how many we had for 2, is what you're going to do for the triangle. So I want you to go through, do the same thing you did for the wagon, but now we're looking at corners on triangles, which is going to be a different value than 4. So make sure that you figure out what that value is first before you start your chart. And once you're done, we'll move on to number 3. Last question is, how many pennies have the same value as 8 nickels? Now, I know we don't have pennies anymore, but 1 penny is 1 cent, and a nickel is 5 cents. So if we want to figure out how many pennies fit into a nickel, we'll just have to count how many 1 cents fit into that nickel. So if we have 1 cent plus another cent, that's 2, plus another cent, that's 3, plus another cent, 4, plus another cent, 5. So 5 cents or 5 pennies is what we're working with here. So for number 1, same thing we did for both number 2 and number 1, we are going to place the value, in our case, for how many pennies fit into a nickel for number 1. And you are going to continue that pattern through your chart. Now, when you are done that, we are going to continue on to the last portion of this lesson, which may or may not be a very delicious part of the lesson. So feel free to pause the video, make sure you finish the chart, check your answers with your parents, and then we can move on to the delicious part of the lesson. Now we get to move to the delicious part of this lesson, and you are actually going to use patterns to figure out how much of each ingredient you are going to need to make your very own edible cookie dough. So the ingredients that we are looking at are butter, brown sugar, milk or water, flour, chocolate chips, and vanilla. Those are the only ingredients you are going to need. But first, before you can make the cookie dough, you need to figure out how many tablespoons of each ingredient you are going to need. So each ingredient, I have provided the first 3 numbers. So for example, for butter, we start at 0, and then 1, and then 2, and then you have to figure out what 4 and 5 would be and say what the pattern is. So just like we did on the other worksheet, except this time you're figuring out the pattern and trying to figure out what number 5 is for the purpose of making the cookies. So you are going to have to go through and figure out each one of those values. So in the case of our recipe, your 5th column on your chart here is going to be the number of tablespoons you will need to make a delicious cookie dough recipe. And once you are done filling all of those in and get your number 5, you are going to put your number 5 into the blank space right down here so that you have your recipe ready to go when you make it. That is it for the lesson. Once you figure out your number 5, feel free to go ahead and make those cookies. Or if you don't make the cookies, that is completely okay as well. Maybe in the future you can use those measurements and your understanding of patterns to make a different recipe. So I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you next time.